Okay, well, let's move on to the next person. George, what is your issue?
I think that one thing they could definitely look at, and I think a main thing they could look at, is things out of the game, out of the battles, because to be honest, I think it's quite lacking at the moment. We can see that they've added these daily missions, and I think they're good. I like the intention behind them. The execution, yeah, a little bit off, but we haven't seen anything like that from them before, so you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be perfect the first time. And I think that overall it's a good step, but the testing and implementation will have to be refined definitely over the course of the next patches, hopefully. But I think there's also a lot more they could do with it. I think that the commander trial tokens are few and far between, and that really links in with what they can do outside of the battles in the economy sense, because I feel like silver is good. I feel like the amount of unit XP you gain in comparison to your commander XP, like leveling him up, I think that's also good. I don't feel like your commander is miles ahead of your units. I don't feel like your units is miles ahead of your commander either. I feel like that's a reasonably good place. People could make arguments for tweaking it either way, I suppose, but generally it's not a main priority, but it is something that could be tweaked. But I do feel like unlocking new commanders is definitely like a problem, because I wanted to try out Ambiorix, for example, last patch, and I simply never got enough XP. I unlocked Scipio, and that was it. And so I feel like creative ways of getting more free XP, or more ways of getting trial tokens, or ways to try out commanders would certainly add to the sort of overall economy of the game. And I feel like that could be done with just like features we discussed before on these podcasts, such as campaigns, or like some form of longer mission streaks or something. But obviously the direct implementation of that is down to people at NetEase and CA of what direction they would like their game to go. But yeah, I believe that's probably quite a key problem that we've got at the moment.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with that. Back in one of the podcasts in the past, someone made a really good argument of how the new game mode with the capture points introduces some kind of shorter term goals to focus on for the players, instead of just I'll either kill the entire army or capture the base and then you win. So I think that philosophy is really good, and it should be carried over to the metagame, right, outside of the battles themselves. So right now, what the overall goal is to grind to tier 10. I mean, that's going to take quite a while. So I think they should introduce, yes, things like campaigns and other stuff to give us some shorter term goals. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna, for example, try to finish this campaign within this week or this month, or there's a time limited event here. So yeah, if I participate in that event, I can get a lot of XP, or maybe some special stuff, maybe some other new feature, right? We talked about banners, so there's a limited event where you can get a lot of banners and then have a huge stockpile for the future and don't have to worry about them for the next few months, something like that.
Yeah, could I just come back in now? That's all right. I'm just thinking, when you said about the tier 10, it's quite a grind. I agree with you. Yeah, it is. It does take quite a while in comparison to other things. But I do feel that is counterbalanced by the fact that there's not a lot to do after tier 10. I feel like if you made it too fast, then you'd have a lot of bored people. And so I feel like the shorter term goals would have to come in with some form of possibly end game features. I'm not quite sure about how you would add that. Maybe other people have some ideas, but I feel like if you give people these short-term goals that increase the amount of grind, etc., it does make the end game slightly more tedious, if that makes any sense. I'm not quite sure if I use the right word there.
Maybe disagree, because what these short-term goals are about is about actually speeding up the progression, right? Because you have a set of missions, and then every mission gives you some kind of a reward, which the goal of those rewards is to overall speed up your progress, right? That's why you want to participate in those kinds of events, because hey, if I participate in this event, if I finish this campaign, I will get my tier 10 sooner, right? And then I want to have tier 10 because, well, right now there's maybe not that big of a because, other than being always guaranteed to be top tier in the matchmaking, right? And just overall having more fun because tier 10 units have, well, the most abilities, right? And I personally at least find it a much more compelling experience where you have a lot of those abilities, you have a lot of things to do, and you have just more ways of carrying your team and outplaying your opponent or be outplayed. It's just a bigger thrill, better fun. That's why I would like to strive towards getting those tier 10s. But that's not necessarily the case for everyone. I've heard for a lot of people that, well, I just like tier 6 a lot. So I like my unit. This specific unit has a specific set of abilities that I really like and enjoy, and just enjoy playing tier 6, right? But then, yeah, that guy can get quickly bored, so also give him some stuff to do on the side. Anyone else?
To segue off of that, I was one of the people that I preferred tier 8. Obviously, you couldn't find tier 10 matches in NA depending on the time. So that was a large factor in why I played tier 8 a lot. But I personally liked tier 8 a lot. In pretty much the regards that you said, I found most of the units pretty engaging and entertaining and unique at that tier for the factions I played. Another thing to loop back to George's idea on endgame, I think they really need to hammer out an endgame at some point. Probably, in the next few weeks or months, if you're planning on releasing or something. And I don't know what time frame they have in mind, but look at a game like League of Legends. It's a free-to-play game. It costs nothing to download. None of the champions cost you any money if you don't want to spend any money on them. Riot Games wasn't always a large company. I mean, now they are, yes, but they carried that same model pretty much throughout the game's life. And really the way they do it is down to, some skins. Cosmetics are mostly what keeps everything going. Name changes, other things of that nature. And the end game in that game is ranked. You grind rank to be a higher rank to say you're a higher ranked. I don't know if you go down the path of having a ranked system in Arena. I don't know if it's good for the health of the game. But I think at some point you do need to seriously look at what your end game is, because I can tell you right now that when I reach tier 10, I'm probably just going to go to another faction and play another faction unless I have some friends on there like, hey, you want to play tier 10? Granted, that thought process was hugely limited to the fact that tier 10 games were very rare in NA because there were less players and they were extremely time limited, and if you weren't on for basically the 60-minute time chunk, you weren't going to get a play tier 10. But at the same time, a clearly defined end game is healthy for your game, especially as you move towards release, right?
But I think that end game isn't one of the actually top priorities to get before the release. Like, there are many other much more important things than the end game, and if they introduce some kind of an end game, obviously they have to at some point, but I don't necessarily think that point should be the release or the next big step. That can wait. Obviously, the sooner the better. Maybe not necessarily as well. But yeah, I don't think like end game in particular is a burning issue. The meta game, the lack of stuff to do outside of the game, right? That is a lot more of a burning issue because that correlates to a much larger portion of the player base rather than the end game. And first you want to ensure that larger portion of your player base doesn't leave the game, that it finds the game amusing to play and interesting to do things and doesn't get burnt out quickly. That is, you need to secure that base, that wider player base, and then you start building the end game on top of that, rather than the other way around, I think.
I agree with that, but I mean, this is also, no offense to them, but this is going to be their third release. and there's a reason people stop playing. I was not one of them. I truly loved the game and the process of playing the actual match. It totally hooked me. It hooked all of us. That's why we're all here talking about it. But for, your average player.
Also, but that's what I'm saying. For the average player that decides to leave the game, what is going to fix that issue is not the end game, it's the meta game. That's my point. So anyone else on the meta game? Foxy, Shlomi?
Yeah.
Foxy, go ahead.
I think, to be honest, I don't care about the end game at all. At least not right now. I'm happy to have my tier 10 and just spam tier 10 all day long, or as long as I can till I have to farm low tier to get more silver. If that's still the case, I don't know actually. I don't have tier 10 units in the tests so far, so I can't comment on that. But I'm happy just obliterating everyone in tier 10 matches. That's fun. I don't need ranked. It's fun to have, but like Astolfo said, it's like, if it's good, is it bad for arena? We don't know. Maybe later. But I think, to be honest, we need some kind of meta game, like missions, like all the stuff that we already said. But I think we won't get it now, and not in the near future. I think all the system designers are busy doing new factions and new units and stuff like that, and they don't have the time to actually create a new system for I don't know, like missions or dailies or whatever you want to call your meta game, or what you want to make your meta game out of. So yeah, I think we have to wait a long time before we see any major announcements or even experiments.
Okay, here I'm gonna disagree with you, because first, it's usually different people that do that sort of stuff. So people who create new factions, balance the units and the game mode itself, are usually different people than those who develop features like in metagame. And we've already seen them doing something towards that. We have those daily missions right now. You have the pool of 12 missions, and you get 4 missions every day. And then you get some silver, free XP, sometimes the unit XP tokens as well, and commander trial tokens. In some missions even give you 1 day of premium. So yeah, they've already started doing something towards that. It's just not much yet. But yeah, especially judging by the fact that they have already started doing something, I'll say that we can easily expect more in that regard in the closest future, in the next few patches. And Shlomi, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I was wanting to add to what Foxy said earlier. If they start too late, they're gonna risk the game dying again, basically, because if people reach the spot where they're in the game and they're just judging by what they already achieved, they're like, okay, I'm grinding units to grind other units, to buy new commanders, to grind them. It circles around and people can lose interest, so they need to start really early, bringing some sort of events, more engaging missions, because the missions we have right now is play the game but differently a bit and get 1,000 silver. Here you are. It's a good start, don't get me wrong, but it's not really engaging, and obviously at some point they'll have to deal with customization options, cosmetics, and all that. But right now it's a very straight path. Even with the skill point system they introduced, it's even more clear what currency you use for what. And I think it could have a sort of bore out if they don't get on the topic sooner than later.
Yeah, in terms of those daily missions, I do agree they were kind of shitty, both in terms of rewards and what you actually had to do complete the mission. That definitely needs to be looked into, and well, I have a lot of feedback about that, but I'm going to skip it for the time being. It's also pretty obvious.